This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. My guest today is Zeb Rice. Zeb is a co-founder and partner at King River Capital, which is based in sunny Surrey Hills in Sydney, Australia, where Zeb leads investments in companies that are redefining key sectors of the economy across the US and Australia. And I think his current focus at King River is on software as a service, e-commerce, digital health, and Web3 and Web3 infrastructure. So I'm sure we'll talk a bit about this today. Welcome to the show, Zeb.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So I think to begin with, Zeb, I'd love to get a little bit of background on yourself. Could you please introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background. I don't think you're from Sydney, but love to hear how you ended up there and how long have you been in venture?
Yeah, so I've been in the venture kind of entrepreneurial world my whole career, really. So from the early 90s, I was desperate to get back to California and jump into the fray in Silicon Valley. I'd gone to school back east in the US and American, and really was there at the dawn of Web1 and the transition to Web2 in the 90s. Really watching and learning how the internet infrastructure was built and these extraordinary businesses were constructed from people's imaginations, really, and these businesses that transformed people's lives. So I was an entrepreneur, worked at a bunch of different startups in the 90s, ended up coming down to Australia in the mid-90s because at that time I was doing work for some of the biggest corporations in the world on the web. So I managed the launch of Bank of America's first website, and Microsoft had no one in the web, and so I was my team was hired, and we went up and did the launch of Windows 95 up in Redmond. And on the back of that, I was asked to come down to Australia and ended up setting up and then staying to run a corporate investment business down here. And I went back to the US for 17 or 18 years, did a couple more startups, and then launched my own venture firm in the early 2000s, and did that for 15 or 16 years, and then came back to Australia with my wife, who's Australian, and set up King River Capital a few years ago.
Awesome. And well, that's why don't you give us that's kind of the origin story. Tell us a little bit more about what King River Capital is. If you have a thesis, I'm sure you've got one or two. How big your operation is, and all that good stuff.
Great. So King River Capital is focused on two primary themes. One is software and the businesses that are being built to become very big businesses in the software area. And secondly is to invest in this transformation that we're just beginning to witness in Web3 and crypto. And so that's really what we're focused on. We have a thesis that the crypto world is going to really take over most sections of the economy. And we're putting our money where our thesis is. And in terms of capital that we've raised, we have a little bit of a different model. So rather than going out and raising $1 billion fund or a multi-billion-dollar fund, what we try to do at King River is raise smaller funds and work with our investors on a co-investment basis. So that we have kind of maximal time and attention as partners with our deals, and can work closely in partnership with our LPs, our limited partners or investors in our funds. And so kind of our model is, rather than going out and trying to find every deal, we really want to work with our investors and our partners to originate proprietary deals through relationships, and through kind of have that vetting happen from our investors and network globally. And in terms of total capital raise, I think we're in the sort of 400, $500 million range.
Nice, nice, Zeb. And what I found interesting is just in the course of doing some research before chatting to you, this might have been on your LinkedIn, somewhere like that. Perhaps you have a blog. I read it somewhere, but you wrote a blog post. I don't know how recent it is, but love you to kind of explain the environment that is Surrey Hills, and you talked about the kind of the startup culture there, because I used to live in Surrey Hills myself, but this is going back around 20 years, probably very early 2000s. I lived in Surrey Hills for a while, so I'm familiar with the area. But yeah, I was fascinated to read what a real hub for well, Australian and international startup culture it has become and is becoming.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I moved here some years ago, and I also, as I mentioned earlier, moved here in the 90s. And I remember in the 90s, I just felt so far away from Silicon Valley, and I, get the occasional Wall Street Journal mailed to me, 2 or 3 weeks late, or Macworld or whatever magazine, and I felt very far away. And obviously with COVID, it's very obvious, all that's kind of changed. But it's more than just the ability to telecommute. It's that Australia has the kind of the ingredients that you need to have this kind of VC flywheel. Because there's sort of, people say that why is Silicon Valley Silicon Valley? How did it become that? And really, there were two or three things that went into that. One was extraordinary innovative talent, and kind of the educational background for that. And so that's the second one, is the education, and two and three rather is the money. And so what I saw when I came to Australia was, particularly in Surrey Hills, but obviously Melbourne and other parts of the country and the city of Sydney have innovation. But what I saw was that kind of that concentration where you have UTS, you have University of Sydney, UNSW is just a tram ride away. So you have that first piece, that educational piece. And then the second piece is that innovative culture. And you have this spirit in Australia of pioneers, the gold mining days down in Melbourne, obviously, but that extends, or in Victoria, and that extends to the kind of the mining culture and the betting culture. And so you have this kind of risk-taking entrepreneurial culture here. And then finally, as many people know, the superannuation business here, savings market here, even though Australia is, I think, the 12th largest economy in the world, it has the 4th largest pension funds assets under management. So there's several $1 trillion of assets that are here. And there's also a very wealthy population. I think it's one of the most wealthy countries in the world. So you get that angel money coming from the successful business people and doctors and lawyers and so on, that have real estate investors and so on, that have made enough money to make some bets in the startup world, and then you have all the kind of large licks of capital from very wealthy families and pension funds to kind of back it up. And so I saw all those ingredients kind of coming together 5 or 10 years ago, and what we've seen is this extraordinary explosion in innovation and really in market value. So the last thing I'll say on that is, I haven't done the numbers in almost a year, but a year ago when I looked at it, there was well north of $100 billion in value just in Surrey Hills, and sort of within walking distance of our offices in Surrey Hills. You've got the afterpays and the campaign monitors and the Canvas and the deputies and the safety cultures and the Tyros and on and on. All the ones I mentioned are unicorns, and then there's probably a dozen or more what I call soonicorns that are going to be there very soon, that are in the hundreds of millions. And when you add all that up, you're looking at $100 to $200 billion of equity value. Again, 12 months ago, that may have increased. And what happens is that's where you get the flywheel happening, is as the afterpay, liquidity, starts to flow through. If one day, Canva's public or some of these companies are sold, a huge percentage of that is owned by the employees. They start buying, new new apartments or homes. They start investing in their friends' businesses. They have the experience of success. They start launching their own businesses. The VCs that back them get a taste of that kind of extraordinary return. The superannuation funds and angel investors that back the VC funds get huge returns, and you get this amazing flywheel of innovation, of entrepreneurship, and money making. And that's really what you need. And I really saw that happening in a very concentrated way in Surrey Hills. And, when I was living here in the 90s, the best and the brightest people were moving to Hong Kong and New York and London and so on. And now what I'm seeing is that the young people coming up, or even the mid-level people in their careers, there's so much opportunity here. And so I'd add a fourth ingredient, which is it's just wonderful climate and beach culture and mountains, and just kind of have all the ingredients for a healthy life experience. And so it's kind of, to me, the killer app or the killer location to kind of for the flywheel to happen.
Absolutely, wonderfully said, Zeb. And so you guys at King River. So as I understand it, you've obviously got various investments, and I think you've put together a fund that is dedicated to Web3, and I can see. So I suppose, love you to talk specifically about. Well, let's talk specifically about that fund first, and I suppose what the thesis is for that, and then maybe we'll drill down into some of your investments in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the thesis for the crypto fund is that every generation or so, you get not just a technology innovation, but really a whole subset of innovations that all of a sudden kind of come together, and people awaken to the possibilities. And you get this kind of, we call it sort of like a Cambrian explosion of innovation. We saw that in the 90s when you had personal computers connect with the internet, kind of Web 1. We saw that with the smartphone when you had high bandwidth wireless combined with the microchips and graphics cards and so on. Excuse me. And you have that same thing happening right now, where you have 7 or 8 different technologies coming together, or ideas coming together, to cause this crypto explosion. Everyone sort of says, oh, it's cryptocurrencies, it's Bitcoin or Ethereum, but actually you have the blockchain, obviously, and that kind of technology, but you have this concept of non-fungible tokens and the metaverse. You have ZK rollups, you have Web3 tokenomics, you have stable coins, you have DeFi, you have DAOs, you have the open source phenomenon being deployed in this context. You have all these 7 or 8 things weaving together to cause this explosion of innovation. And when you take those different things and you combine them, you can get some very, very big shifts of capital and very big businesses built very quickly. To give you one example, I think it was Uniswap, the founder of that I guess you could call it a business, or really it's a protocol. He wrote 300 lines of code, which allowed people to swap from one crypto token to another crypto token in an automated fashion. It's called an automated market making smart contract, or a decentralized exchange. Historically, if you wanted to sell one asset for another, buy a stock or a bond, or any kind of financial instrument, you had to have market makers. You had to have an order book. You had to have the execution of that trade. You had to have the settlement of the trade, and you had to have the clearing to make sure all the monies went where they're supposed to. And that was still to this day is big kind of manual process, and expensive process, and there's humans involved. It's being digitized. We have an investment in a company, extraordinary company called FinClear, that does that for the ASX. But what this company Uniswap, or protocol Uniswap, did is, in 300 lines of code, they allowed people to do that permissionlessly, in a totally censorship-resistant, decentralized way, without having to know or trust who the counterparty was. And that Uniswap, AMM, was an idea, back, let's just say 2 years ago. Well, within a matter of months, it went from a few $1 million of people trading tokens to that, because of open source, that source code being forked or copied or replicated, and people improving on it. In a matter of months, it went from a few $1 million to over $400 billion. Last number I had was Q2 of last year. That may be well north of $400 billion. So you go from basically nothing to several $100 billion in transaction volume, because it's just a better idea in this magical 300 lines of code. And so again, I could go through examples for every one of these 7 or 8 or 9 kind of innovations, but when you put those pieces together, open source in that case with blockchain, and that I think it's a DAO that runs it. You have stable coins that's powering a lot of it. It's DeFi. There's all these different things that go into that, and you just get this explosion. So that's just one example.
Yeah, well, that's right. And, I said, Zeb, that we'd dig into a couple of the companies that are in your portfolio. And there's a couple that stand out to me as particularly interesting. One is Discord, which is would I describe it as a Web3 company? Yes and no, but it is, because it's such a it's where all the communities hang out for example, NFTs and a lot of DeFi communities, trading communities, just crypto communities in general. A lot of them certainly are in Discord, and of course gaming, so metaverse gaming, etc. as well. So I'd love to hear your thesis for Discord and how long you've been in. And the second one is Immutable, which I think that's an Australian company. It's like
Surrey Hills.
Yeah, there you go. So let's do Discord first. What's your Discord thesis, and when did you get in?
So we normally invest in companies kind of earlier on in their life cycle. Discord was a case where we came in actually as an investor through a company that they acquired. And so they are passionate about the safety of their community, it being a user-generated content or social platform. They have issues with just as any social platform does with hate, harassment, abuse, that kind of thing on the platform. And so they bought a company that we invested in. We led the Series A of a company called Sentropy. And Sentropy developed a natural language understanding machine learning company to identify that. So they take it super seriously. But since we've been investors for the last year or so in Discord, it's been extraordinary to see how they've matured from a kind of gamer platform into really a social network. And if you look at the data, I haven't looked at it in some months, but the last time I looked, the second most used social platform in the world was Discord after Facebook. And many people in the world haven't even heard of it, but you can guarantee if you have teenagers, they're probably spending time on it. And we use it for our work, as a kind of like a Slack type thing. Yeah. So it's an extraordinary business, and as you say, it's Web 2 and Web 3. It really is the heart of a lot of the crypto conversations. These communities that form around crypto protocols, a lot of the life lives between Twitter and Discord because they're not in an office oftentimes. The community is not just the people working on the protocol. It's the tens or hundreds of thousands or millions of people that are passionate about the protocol or the DApp, decentralized application. And that community really lives on Twitter and Discord.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I'd be embarrassed and you'd be shocked, Zeb, if I told you how many hours I spend every day on Twitter and in Discord. And, as much as I kind of have a love-hate relationship with Discord because it's kind of necessary because I'm in a number of NFT communities and you need to check the Discord every day just to make sure there's nothing coming up that you need to be aware of. But it's this also, and a lot of other people speak about having this experience as well. It's just it's a condition of the modern world, Zeb. It's the idea of kind of information overload and how do you stay up to date with all these different information streams. Man, it is hectic. I don't know if the human brain is wired for this.
No, it's we need some augmentation or something.
What about Immutable then? Because yeah, as you say, that it's an Australian-based startup as well, right?
Yeah, Immutable is an extraordinary business. So they were started here in Surrey Hills by two brothers, James and Robbie Ferguson, and their friend Alex Connolly, the CTO. And it's an extraordinary story because what they did was they were just young guys that loved playing video games, and they were entrepreneurial, started a few businesses. But what they noticed in the game that they were building back in 2016 or 2017 was that they launched a game on blockchain back then. And what they noticed was that right around the same time with CryptoKitties, if any of your listeners followed that back in 2017, I think it was. And as CryptoKitties and their game became more and more popular, what they discovered was that gas fees on Ethereum went up very, very quickly. And they said, this is just not scalable. But Ethereum is ultimately, they believe, and we believe, going to be the settlement layer for a huge portion of financial transactions going forward, including in-game economies. And so they said, we need to build on top of Ethereum such that you maintain the decentralization, the censorship resistance, the permissionlessness, the auditability and immutability and so on of Ethereum layer 1. But we need to do something about the scalability, the gas costs, and the kind of user experience. And so they set out back, 4 or 5 years ago to build a layer 2 solution called Immutable X. They launched that last year. They have their two games, Guild of Guardians and Gods Unchained. I think Gods Unchained is the second or third most popular blockchain game in the world, depending on how you measure it. And so they have this very, very successful games where your in-game items, in the case of Gods Unchained, it's your kind of playing cards, Pokemon style or Magic the Gathering style, and those cards are NFTs. And you can trade those on Immutable X layer 2 in a gas-free, carbon neutral, and fee, seamless way. But you can also back those out down to your layer 1 wallet on Ethereum itself. And there's also an open order book. So all the different exchanges and marketplaces that connect using Immutable X, every game has this kind of shared order book. They signed a deal with OpenSea they announced last year. So if you mint something on OpenSea, you can back that down to Ethereum or put it up into any other exchange or offer it for sale on any other exchange. And so they've announced some extraordinary partnerships with, TikTok and Illuvium and, a number of other very famous collectibles like Disney and Marvel's collectibles are based on that, digital collectibles. And so they've really built this very big, very fast growing business right here out of Sydney, a global, we believe, multi-billion-dollar kind of NFT market platform and marketplace business.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, the last 2 years or so, Zeb, you'll only be too familiar in terms of we had this kind of rise, this DeFi boom, right? So sudden Cambrian explosion, if you like, in DeFi. Yeah. And then that kind of settled down. And then we had exactly the same kind of boom cycle happen with NFTs. Crypto has done pretty well at the same time, but there is a sense that perhaps the NFT market is slightly overheated, could be a bubble. That's just what happens when you get a new kind of technology boom. You get a lot of fast money, you get a lot of hustlers, people get scammed, and prices can run away with themselves. But at the same time, just incredible innovation happening, and it's incredibly positive for bringing new people into crypto. But I just wonder, what do you see going forward? what are the kind of the trends and cycles that you're looking at for the next 1 or 2 years, Seb? I know it's kind of speculative and no one knows.
That's what I do, right? So
sure.
I'm happy to share my 2 cents. And there's so much. I mean, this is one of the most exciting moments in my career. You know, I there's so many answers to that question because there's so much innovation, so much entrepreneurship happening right now. So I'll give you maybe 2 or 3 quick examples of where I see it going. One I would say is I don't think the NFT boom ends. I think, you know, maybe the profile pic thing is overwrought or the art thing is overwrought. But as we were just talking about with Immutable, $100 billion a year is spent by people on in-game items, right? They play a game and they spend that much money in game. I think the music industry is 40 billion. You know, you added the music industry with the movie, and I think even television industry is not even as big as all the game, you know, revenues in video game revenues in the world combined. And so what I see is that NFTs will be seen not so much as this kind of you know, digital picture, but more as a utility, as like a digital primitive for buying and selling in-game assets. So I think the NFT boom continues, but it sort of shifts in focus. I would say another theme that we're excited about is the migration of real world assets on chain. So obviously DeFi is financial assets, but what about, you know, taking instead of having like Bitcoin or Ethereum as your collateral in DeFi or a stable coin, you know, what if you were somehow able to take real estate and digitize that, or real world commodities and digitize those, and then use those to fractionalize and use as collateral and so on in DeFi. So I think DeFi, you know, as you said, it sort of boomed in 2020. It still boomed in 2021. But there's another wave, I think, coming in DeFi. And then last one I'll give is as an example of kind of what we see coming is all the tooling, all the infrastructure to support all these different businesses and transactions online, not online, on digital crypto rails. There's $2 or $3 trillion of assets locked on chain, and a lot of that is kind of people, quote unquote, YOLOing. You only live once, YOLOing or aping into ideas, but getting your fiat in and out is still a bit rough and expensive. Securing it, having cross-chain, secure bridges. There's a lot of hacks, happening. The user interface leaves something to be desired. All of that requires infrastructure. I saw that same thing happen with Web1. I saw that same thing happen with Web2, and you get some of the most valuable, sustaining, iconic businesses built in that infrastructure space. I think about Cisco in the 90s with Web1. I think about some of the extraordinary businesses, like a Squarespace or a Stripe or a Square in Web2 that are the kind of plumbing and the pipes for this new digital world.
Yeah, and one of the things that has accelerated the shift into this new digital world, Zeb, of course, famously and obviously, is COVID. It has, famously, a lot more people were kind of stuck at home with a lot of time on their hands. And so where are they going to go? They're going to go into virtual worlds. And so that certainly did contribute, I think, to the acceleration of NFTs, metaverse, online trading, all of that. And I suppose it would be remiss, Zeb, if I didn't ask you for just any kind of top line thoughts you had on what is happening in terms of the geopolitical situation at the moment. I'm always very aware that listeners probably aren't tuning into the crypto conversation to hear me talk about what's happening in the Ukraine. So I don't try and do that too much, but the reality is, I was surprised today, like everyone, Bitcoin is up 11% overnight. maybe starting to react differently from equities just for a change. And gold, gold has not really done what gold is supposed to do in these times. And look, I mean, Bitcoin could very easily crash again by the time this podcast comes out. But it's just... there's a lot going on, and I guess one of the points I'm making, Zeb, is all the geopolitical situation at the moment is also shining a light, for better or worse, on crypto.
Two quick thoughts on that. One is just building on what you said. Bitcoin appears to be the new digital, the new gold. It's digital gold, right? And I read an article the other day where someone in the Ukraine was desperately trying to flee. And all the cash, banks were all closed and the banking networks were shut down. And this family, I think it was, needed to buy a car to leave because they couldn't get any trains or buses; they were all full. And so they were able to use Bitcoin to buy the car. In the old days, that would have been gold, right, or jewels, I guess. And so. That's an example right there. And you have, the Starlink satellite network now being increased over Ukraine. And so even if the cell towers are taken out, if you've got your Starlink dish and a generator or a solar panel, you can still have internet access and use your digital gold, your Bitcoin. So that's the first thought I have is just, I agree with you. I think that we're seeing a transition, and I think takes a while for people to awaken to the fact that this is kind of the value of something like a Bitcoin. And I think we're seeing that. It's moments like this and stories like that awaken people to that possibility. Second thing I'd say is kind of a longer term thing. And I don't know where we end up on this, but I think a lot of people, particularly young people, spend most of their time online. And they grow up as citizens of whatever Discord groups they're part of, not more than they are citizens of the country that they're in. And I mean, I spent a lot of time playing video games growing up, and certainly felt that way for a long time. But what was missing was this kind of digital ownership, and that's what NFTs and in Ethereum and Bitcoin and so on unlock, is the ability for people to not just express their sort of social identities, but to express almost their national identities in the metaverse, in cyberspace. And so I think what you'll see increasingly is with digital goods, with this kind of ability for companies to, not even companies really, but for dApps and DAOs to operate borderlessly. And even if the government wants to shut them down, if you're able to get your hands on a solar panel and a satellite connection to Starlink, you've got access to your full wealth in the digital sphere. And so property rights, which was one of the most important functions of the police power of a state and the need for centralization in a state, I wonder whether that changes. And then finally, related to that point, stable coins are emerging, algorithmic stable coins like UST, and Terra's, 15 or whatever, different stable coins. You suddenly don't need the currencies of states either. You can operate in a stateless way with currencies. And so it's kind of like dawning on me that actually states may become in our lifetime less relevant or perform other functions than heretofore.
Yeah, that's a great point, Zeb, and I completely agree with that. It's, I think, younger people today that are just sort of starting to grow up now and spending time in these decentralized virtual worlds, interacting with avatars and other characters, and I don't know where any of these people live, are from, what they believe politically or religiously, based on some imaginary line drawn on a map. And it's a brave new world, and these changes are happening faster than we think. Things are accelerating. Just before we go to a break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish off with the very famous Crypto Conversation Hot Take round. That'll be fun to do with you, Zeb. Just before we do, I noticed in a bio of yours somewhere it said something like you can usually find Zeb reading medieval mystical poetry or studying the stars. And look, that's just a lovely phrase, medieval mystical poetry. I have to ask what that means.
I have a deep and abiding passion for mysticism of every kind, and really what I discovered was this treasure trove of medieval literature, really coming out of the Egyptian alchemical tradition, the Islamic mystical tradition, and the European Christian tradition, as well as the Jewish tradition, particularly in Spain. And so there are all of these poets and these mystical writers that emerged, whether it be the Zohar in Kabbalah and in Judaism, or the Ibn Arabis in Islam. There's just, or Attar out of Persia, the Conference of the Birds is probably one of my all-time favorites. The Rumis, many people know Rumi. And so there was this kind of effervescence of mysticism and poetry that is kind of an uncovered kind of legacy of human inspiration and insight into the nature of life. And so I've kind of have a slight obsession with it. And so, yeah, that's what I was referring to there. And the stars are part of that, the sort of astrology, and not in the kind of modern horoscope sense, but more in the traditional alchemical and four elements sort of sense.
I love it. Yeah, fantastic. Alchemy, ancient wisdom, all that good stuff.
Indeed.
Well, let's go to a very quick break. And then, as I said, we'll come back, we'll have some fun. We'll finish off with the very famous Crypto Conversation Hot Take Round.
In today's crypto market, the team at Brave New Coin are the sector's leading builders of custom crypto indices. BNC's powerful indexing engine draws on Brave New Coin's premium data to calculate high-frequency intraday and end-of-day indices for a wide range of index products. BNC's custom indices help you to gain exposure to the crypto assets class and track your performance against the market without having to become a stock picker. Not sure what you need? A Brave New Coin consultant can help you assess your requirements. Contact BNC today to find out more.
All right, we're back, and I'm with Zeb Rice. Zeb is a co-founder and partner at King River Capital in Surrey Hills, Sydney, where he leads investments in areas such as Web3. And well, Zeb, like I always say, I like to finish each podcast with a quick round of rapid-fire crypto conversation. Hot takes, are you up for it?
Absolutely.
All right, just want your quick, snappy answers, hot take style. Zeb, question one is, where do you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-coin opportunist spectrum?
I am definitely a multi-coin maximalist.
Fair enough. All right, well, what would you say is your firmest conviction crypto opinion, Zeb?
Oh gosh, my firmest crypto opinion. I guess my firmest crypto opinion is that the world of finance is going, and this is a world which is several $100 trillion, about 100 trillion of fiat, about 250 trillion of real assets, real estate, about 250 or 300 trillion of stocks and bonds. I think that the majority of that is going to migrate over to crypto in the next 10 years. We're at 2 or 3 trillion today. Look for that to go up at least 100-fold in the next 5 to 10 years.
I love it. All right. Well, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So whatever you like here, Web3, blockchain, NFTs, what does it all look like in 10 years' time, Zeb?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I think people overestimate how much time they're going to be spending in virtual reality. I think augmented reality is going to be much bigger than virtual reality, and this is where you're looking through glasses or through kind of a lens, and the world around us is going to be augmented by that virtual reality. I mean, I imagine like playing video games. My dream is to have goggles where they're see-through, and I'm running through the forest with friends, playing a first-person shooter game or something like that, an adventure game with real people in a real setting, running around, but having that augmented by all the kind of virtual reality. So I think that's possible in 10 years. On the political side, as I said, I think that there's going to be kind of a shrinking or thinning of national borders, and on the finance side, a huge migration to crypto rails.
Love it, Zeb. All right, well, the flip side, of course, is a quote by famous author William Gibson, who said that the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. Can you think of an example of the future being here right now, Zeb, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
Yeah, I think that this idea of a DAO, which is just another form of corporation, is something that most people have never heard of. But when you look, as you do, into these Discord channels, you start spending time there, and you look at these dApps that are being created. It's really a new form of corporate cooperation, and you might have a couple people in Sydney start a dApp, launch a business, and what starts to happen is that people that they've never met before and may never meet in Africa or in Ukraine, and actually is a big center for crypto, they start contributing in the Discord ideas, and then start to contribute code or work on the marketing or manage the Discord, or suddenly you have these businesses that aren't really businesses. And the classic, most recent example is the Mars protocol, where the Delphi combined, which is any kind of incubator, investment fund, podcaster, consulting firm, worked with a number of other different players, and they launched on the Terra blockchain the Mars protocol. Well, they're just in the process of doing a fair launch of that. They're open sourcing the code. They're open sourcing it's a lending, kind of like Compound or Aave, but on Terra. They're open sourcing the code. They're open sourcing the website. They're open sourcing how they're marketing it, the kind of the Medium, articles. They're just saying, everyone, copy paste it. And oh, by the way, it was built by people all over the world. And they started to form a joint venture and a corporation. They said, you know what? This is working without a company. We can just build a world-changing, maybe one day multi-billion-dollar valued business generating hundreds of millions of dollars of free cash flow in a totally decentralized manner, and maybe even and do that with a DAO. And so that future is already here with or synthetics. Kane Warwick's synthetics or Alien protocols are two other examples. There's now hundreds of these DAOs and these dApps that have launched, and people are working and making unbelievable wealth or just a good living by working for these new kinds of companies. And I don't think most people in the world realize that's already happened.
Exactly right, Zeb. Okay, well, time to zoom out, time to get weird. What do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
I subscribe to the more Buddhist perspective on this, which is humans reincarnating until they kind of work out what it is they need to work out to cleanse their karma. And so my view is that it's a progress for humanity towards the direction that people choose. And they may choose it unconsciously, but each and every one of us has a choice to live a better life in this life and the next. And that comes through the individual choices that we make around the words that we speak, the thoughts that we think, and the actions that we perform. And so I'm an optimist on balance. I think that people will learn their karmic lessons and choose not to continue to suffer, and it may take many rebirths, but we'll get there eventually.
I love it, Zeb. All right, let's start to close this out. Finally, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, TV show, or universe?
Wow. Probably there's so many. I'm a bit biased because I more recently read it, but probably The Three Body Problem.
Yes.
I'm sure that's one that a lot of people choose. In some ways I didn't like it because it was so dystopian and unpleasant, but as someone that's read a lot of science fiction, reading something that was written in Chinese and from a different culture was very refreshing to me. It was different, and also just that integration of kind of real world with sci-fi, with future, and all the I love all the kind of the physics in it as well, being kind of a wannabe physics nerd. I love that part of it too.
Yeah, fantastic, Zeb. You're actually, a few people have picked that over the many podcasts I've done, and I can't remember who it was, but someone picked it just very recently, maybe 1 or 2 episodes ago. And whenever someone does go for The Three Body Problem, I always kind of say, oh yes, I've been meaning to read that, and I'm still meaning to read it, but everyone always says it's that so interesting to get a kind of, as you say, a kind of a different reflection on these things from a different culture, in this case Chinese culture, but very much a different way of looking at things.
Yes, indeed.
All right. I've loved talking to you today, Zeb. This has been fun, and I've really enjoyed the kind of the slightly kind of positive spiritual nature that this podcast has gone. We need that kind of positivity in this crazy world that we're all contributing to. Nothing else to say, Zeb, except hand the metaphorical microphone back to your good self. Please tell the people where they can go to find out more about what you guys are doing at King River, and wherever else you are on the internet, Twitter, anywhere like that.
Yes, so you can find me at Zebediah Rice, ZEBEDIAHRICE, on Twitter. That's probably the best place for me, and then kingriver.co for the business side. And those are probably the 2 best places to find us.
Awesome. Thanks again, Zeb. All the best, and bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, there you go. That was Zeb at King River Capital, Surrey Hills, Sydney. Like I said, I thought that was fun. I enjoyed talking to Zeb. Very nice guy, very successful investor. So yeah, you can look those guys up, King River Capital, if you're doing something in the Web3 space. I'm sure they'd be open to having conversations. But yeah, that's today's show. As I say, fascinating, scary, interesting and compelling times out there on the global stage. Never a dull moment. I might do a podcast just kind of looking in at some of what is happening in the next day or two. Do what I do, go through Twitter, pull out the interesting data points and narratives, because man, it does feel like global change is accelerating. Strange thing to say, but it feels right. Okay, thanks for listening, team. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave New Coin. See ya.